Hi everyone, Armine Bazikyan here. This month we wanted to discuss a very important question, and that is, who should I give my estate planning documents to, or who should have access to my estate plan legally? So this is a very important question because once you have completed your estate plan and have the documents done, everything is great, you're sleeping better at night, the question becomes, well, what do I do with them? So first and foremost, as an attorney, I always recommend that you actually take possession of your documents, your original documents. Now, historically and in the past, what would usually happen would be an attorney's office that would help you prepare your documents would actually hold on to your originals in their safe. I don't like that. I don't like the idea of holding documents or having someone else be in charge of my documents or store them for me. And I don't think you should either. So what I always advise everybody is to make sure that your original documents are in your possession. Because if the attorney's office is holding on to it, you don't know what's going to happen to that attorney. They might pass away, they might retire, and then your family members might be on a wild goose chase trying to track down where your original documents are. So for safety reasons, I always recommend first and foremost taking your documents on your own. So take possession of your documents. You decide where you're going to store them. Your attorney's office can also keep copies in their files, whether electronic or paper, but the original documents, number one, I recommend that you hold on to yourself. Number two, I always recommend that once you do get those originals, you put them in a safe place. Don't just throw them in the kitchen or like the bottom of your closet, because these are originals, and originals are what get the job done at the end of the day. And so I recommend storing them in a very, very safe place. And by safety, I mean waterproof and fireproof. You don't have to put it in a safe that has a combination lock, because again, these documents are not really valuable as far as monetary value is concerned. So we just want to make sure that in case of a fire or a flood of some sort or water damage, that the documents don't get destroyed. So put them in a container that is waterproof and fireproof, up to a certain number of hours, of course, because they're not completely waterproof and fireproof, what's out there in today's market, but put them in some sort of safe or container that does provide some security, some waterproof, some fireproof features. And that's my second recommendation. My third recommendation, now we're getting to the question of, who do I give copies to? Who should have my documents? And unfortunately, I don't really have a great answer for this one because it's so personal. Each family dynamic is different, and we've heard stories of family members getting copies of it, and we've heard stories of family members not having copies of it, and there's been pros and cons to each. So it really depends on you. And whether you want to share your desires with your family or you would like them to discover it after you've passed. And it really depends on the relationship, and not only the relationship with you and your family members, but the dynamic between, children, between each other and other people that are involved. But there are three categories of people that we always recommend that you give your documents to. The first one is your healthcare professionals. So you've presumably, during your estate planning process, prepared estate power of attorney documents related to your healthcare or healthcare directives. We always recommend giving copies, not the original, copies. We always recommend giving copies to your healthcare professionals. So your doctor, if you're going in for surgery, give a copy to the hospital, have a printed copy available with the person that you've named to be in charge. So healthcare professionals and agents should always have a copy of your healthcare directive. And it would be a great idea to also sit down and discuss your directive with whoever it is that you've named to be in charge of medical decisions for you, and your wishes and what your expectations are. The second category of people that we always recommend are caregivers for minor children, so for young children under 18. So we recommend giving your guardianship nomination documents or having them close by, and making sure that your caregivers can access this information. So for example, maybe you don't want to give them the full document, but You've printed it, you've put it in an envelope and you've sealed it, and it's in the kitchen drawer, and you've told your babysitter, like, hey, I'm going out on date night. If something happens and I don't come back, that's the document that I would want you to give to the police department. And the guardianship nomination would detail presumably who you would like to take your children as on a temporary basis in case of an emergency. And so your nannies, caregivers, babysitters, I would highly recommend having your guardianship nomination somewhere in the house and having them know where to get it in case of an emergency. And the third category of people that we always recommend that you notify are the trustees, or the people that are in charge of your estate. So for example, especially if you have young children and you've named someone other than your children. So if you've done your estate planning documents, you've presumably named a trustee executor in place. We always recommend letting them know, like, hey, if something happens to me, you're in charge. Whether you want to provide them with the documentation or not is up to you, again, because that's a personal dynamic choice. You don't have to give them the copies, but what you could say is, hey, you're in charge. If something should happen to me, please, this is where I want you to go to find the original documents or the copies, and that'll get them started, right? So you don't have to give them copies, but we highly recommend that you notify them that they are in charge and where to look for the documents. So this is, again, a personal choice, but the physicians or professionals in the healthcare industry, your minor children's caregivers, and the people that are going to be in charge right after you, we highly recommend that you consider giving documents to, or giving copies of certain documents to be able to jump right in and access it and not be swimming around the house looking for it. So it just makes life a little bit easier for them and for the people that are involved. As always, we hope that this answered your question. We have a full blog write-up on this on our website, so if you want to read about it in detail, feel free to do that. Otherwise, we hope it answered your questions. If you feel like you want to consult with our firm, we do provide free 15-minute consultations. Feel free to contact our office, and we'd be happy to help you. Have a good one. Bye-bye.